Welcome from Design Futures. This is an open and public event hosted on YouTube. My name is Sarah Wu, and I am a proud board member of the Design Futures organization. Design Futures is a leadership development initiative that builds capacity for future leaders and dedicated practitioners to apply the power of community-engaged design to address systemic inequality in the built environment. Design Futures fosters capacity building for student leaders to think critically about power, privilege, and positionality in the practice of community-engaged design, and to rethink and elevate the role of design and the designer to address and dismantle systemic oppression in the built environment. As part of this session, Local Knowledge, Emerging Voices, we will engage past and present students of ArcPrep and provide space for them to share their thoughts on the design field and the built environment. Thank you.
Tonight, some 12 answers to 4 questions. We welcome students from ArcPrep, an architecture program made possible through the collaboration of Taubman College and Detroit Public Schools. Since 2015, almost 400 students have completed the program, and we'll have the privilege to hear some of their voices on today's show. Let's meet our panelists. Ferdinand Bartolone, Corzel Ko, Shajnin Drizdi, Joshua Powell, Darius Britton, Abid Chowdhury, Naive Perriman, Emily Jaramillo, Morgan Kisner, Tamari Claiborne, Jennifer Lopez, and Sarah Shaw Nichols. And joining us live from the great city of Detroit is your host, the exuberant, sometimes zany, Sarah Timberlake.
Wow, what an introduction. I want to welcome everyone to this conversation. Hopefully you already saw in the video, but if you don't know, my name is Sarah and I'll be your host for tonight. So I want to encourage you, if you are at a standing desk, please take a seat and buckle up because we are in for a ride. So today we're going to have a chance to hear from some great designers that I've had the pleasure to work with and even some I've had the pleasure to teach. And just to give a little context, I was a Michigan Belling Fellow through the University of Michigan, and I helped teach ArcPrep in 2018 and 2019. And even before then, I've had many times where I've volunteered and I taught with a lot of the students. So there are some students who are joining us today that I was their teacher. And there are some students that I've just seen the ways that they've grown as a designer over the years in the city of Detroit. So before I begin, I do want to take this moment to recognize the many programs that already exist nationally and internationally with serve the youth. So even as this is just a small cross section in the Michigan Architecture Program, we hope to inspire the same kind of creation of new and sustained support of such programs. So without further ado, we have some great discussions in store for you. So let's get started. I think with that, we already have some of our panelists already joining us here. So why don't you guys take some time to briefly introduce yourselves?
Hey everyone, my name's Samari. I'm going to be coming into the College of Engineering at U of M this fall.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Joshua Powell, and I am currently a dual degree urban planning and architecture master's degree program student at the University of Michigan.
Hello, my name is Mihara Mio, and I am an interior design major at Wayne State University with a minor in Latino and next Latin American Studies.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for introducing ourselves. So let's get into the question that we have for today. And the question I have for us is, what does design mean to you?
All right, Sarah. So I guess I can go first. All right. So to me, design means the creation of unconditional acceptance, togetherness, accommodation, diversity, equity, and inclusivity through the implementation of innovatively thoughtful ideas that seek to serve not some, but all audiences in an equally positive and beneficial way. And so basically, by that, what I mean is that design goes beyond just kind of like the aesthetic pleasure or kind of like the beauty that something like architecture or even like a piece of art or a written piece can present to someone. I believe the design kind of goes down to the to sort of the ergonomic and the accommodations that it provides to those who use it. To kind of come back to the architectural context of my background and of a lot of the backgrounds here, a lot of the backgrounds of the students here. You know, architecture, if you think about it, architecture was originally meant to be structured. It was originally meant to be a roof over someone's head before it became kind of like the focus of artists and architects who kind of become artists just to sort of show the beauty of a piece like in a downtown area or something like that. So I think the design in itself is kind of a power that we all have to impact one another and to really begin to really begin to shape our world to really like accommodate and to help one another instead of simply having it be something that is just like beautiful or that is seen as a masterpiece. We need to work together to form a world that we can all live in through design and through architecture and any other means.
Wow, that was really insightful. Thanks for that, Joshua. Tamara, I'd love to hear from you. What do you think design means?
Oh, no problem. Well, first, I want to say that was a great answer, Joshua. I completely agree. Never really thought to look into design like that, you know, as something that serves, as we can use as a power within us. I really like that. But for me, design is everything, like literally everything. It's the world around us. Everything man-made, even in nature, has been made by design. You know, it could be like you said, a masterpiece, this beautiful artwork, or it could come down to literally the operating system on our phones. Everything in the design was chosen, it was put in its specific place for some specific reason. And with that, I just think that that's something amazing because it leads to become a form of expression within a lot of people. You can put so many feelings, thoughts, just whatever you want into your picture. You know, you've all heard the phrase, "A picture is worth 1,000 words," and there's a meaning to that because of the fact that it's in a form of expression. You can look at a painting. It could be the line work. It could be the color choice used. It can be the emotion of the character or whatever is going on in the painting. You can see it conveys a feeling. It conveys a sense of whatever you want. You know, a grand sense or something just simple. A good example of that would be the Apple operating system. Most people have iPhones, and when you think of it, you think of simple, clean, smooth, you know, swipe down, got your flashlight, your camera, all that good stuff. You open, it's that smooth transition. And there's a reason for that. So they wanted it to be as seamless as possible. So the end user, they don't have to think, you know? And I just think that that's so amazing. It's a form of communication, just playing more into that. It conveys all these thoughts, these feelings, and everyone can use it. You know, it's not an object. You know, it's a concept that is just universal. What's the word? It just all encompassing. There we go. It's anywhere you look, whatever colors, thoughts, anything, you can dissect it as a form of design and find a meaning in it, whether it be to you, whether it be to someone else. It doesn't have to be the same, and that's really what's a part of the beauty of it.
Wow, that's really good. Thanks, Tamari. And I like the way that you're thinking like different scales, like the scale of a whole place to like your operating system on your phone. I will say I am team Android, so I'm not the iPhone, but I understand. So thank you so much for sharing. Emily, would you like to share just what design means to you?
Design to me is, I agree with both of them. It's a way of thinking. It's a form of like how you view the world. I know that prior to ArcPrep, actually, I didn't really look at design as all around us, as every little thing was through the design process and has a design to a purpose. And I also feel like design as a way of thinking and also as a way of expressing yourself. So I know it's very powerful to have design in your community, like different architecture structures. And throughout our cultures, it's a way of power, as like the Mayan structures left behind through architecture. You get to learn more about the culture. And I know as I was like looking through my culture for my architecture essays and the architecture college process, I figured out that in my own community, even though I know it's southwest Mexican town of Detroit, I figured out that there was actually Mexican architecture in the places that I frequently visited, as I saw like Mexican architecture like La Trilidosa by Alberto Castillo. That was something that prior to ArcPrep and prior to design, I didn't really think about. So design to me is really a form of thinking and a way of viewing the world.
Wow, these are such juicy answers. Then thank you all so much for answering them and just for the insights that you have to bring to the table. So at this time, we're going to transition to our next panel now, but we can't wait to see you guys at the question and answer in a little bit. So with that, like I said, we have 12 students that are coming. So we have another 3 students that are joining us here. And I also would encourage you, please feel free to leave any comments or questions in the live YouTube feed. Or if you are part of the Design Futures program, you can hop over to the Slack channel and you can post your questions there. So our panelists will have a chance to answer all your questions after this next panel. So we'd love to hear just some things or some insights or some more things you want to dig into from the things that people shared. So with that, yeah, we're excited to share our next batch of panelists. So you guys can feel free to introduce yourselves to the lovely people around you.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Lopez. I took part of the 2019 class and I'm undecided of what I want to study still.
Yes, my name is Darius Britton. I graduated the ArcPrep program in 2016. I'm currently in my fourth year of architecture degree at University of Detroit Mercy.
Everyone, I'm Abid, and I was also in 2016 ArcPrep with Darius, and currently I just graduated from Tubman with a Bachelor's of Science in Architecture, and yeah.
Awesome. Well, now that everyone knows you, let's dig into another question. So we just talked about what we think design is, and I'd love to hear from you three, what excites you about design? So whoever, you could just feel free to speak up and share what excites you about design.
Yeah, I can go first. So like this is really like a two-part answer for me because one, a lot of things get me excited, but architecture in particular is a lot. But really, the first part would be really the potential of the challenges left behind by the last generation of architects, and that second part would be the next generation that's yet to come. And the reason why that's really a two-part answer is because that first part, where all the kind of weaknesses of the last generation, climate change, heat islands, unadaptable designs, of course, with a few exceptions, but even uninspiring designs. All of these is just basically giving my generation and the up and coming architects of today an opportunity to not only really address those weaknesses, but really to reimagine what architecture can be and what it means. So then just me being as a Black man that will eventually become an architect, the effect that I can have on my community just by building projects, just by going out for events, that's almost an indescribable advantage for that community. Because me growing up, I mean, this might not even be normal for everyone. This might be a normal for other people, but growing up, I didn't see a lot of Black architects. So if it wasn't for my dad, who kind of offhandedly suggested to be like, because I was good at drawing and good at math, he was like, you should be an architect. So like, if it wasn't for that, I could not be in this field. So like I said, I'll probably never be in this field. So that's why it really excites me for the next generation, because it just even in this one little like panel that we're in, or in this event, you see multiple Black people. Even the person hosting this is a Black woman architect. So that just really excites me for the next generation. So of kids that can go out and not have to look so hard for that Black architect, but to also just do things in the community so they can really get exposed to it and see what can be created from what we will be our mistakes later on that we don't even know. So it's a lot that excites me.
Yeah, thanks for that, Darius. I think it's really cool that you think something that's exciting is the people and just the different types of people, and even like a humility to accept like, hey, there may be some things we may not get right, but the next generation will definitely like improve it. So I love what you had to say. Jennifer, would you like to have any insights? Like, what excites you about design?
Of course. So I would say the most exciting part about design for me is the final outcome, and how, you know, the community chooses to admire something and interpret it, but also how they interact with it. I know how they were saying how it's very important for like local communities to come together and work as a community to build up the younger generations. I know for me, I'm working on a project for the community to like increase mobility, and it's like all women program. So it's very nice to be able to have, you know, my community come together to create something, especially with this course. I was able to really take all of the things I learned and just think about perspective and, you know, how everyone was going to interact with it. So I think that's what excites me about it, being able to see people come up to something I've created and how they interact with it.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jennifer. Yeah, it is a reminder that like, yeah, as we build and we design, like there's something really great about that final product, and not only that, but people who like come around and interact with it and the communities that they interact with. So yeah, thanks for that. You want to bring us home, Avi?
Yeah, I could start. I could talk about things that excites me about design. Yeah, going from what Darius was talking about, I found it very fascinating, and I'm also like have similar perspectives as Darius. I see design as something that's very powerful and sort of has the capacity to shape city, society, environment, and we could also start to shape our future through design. And coming from an architecture background, I think design should care for its user, should be humanitarian, should speak for people in a sense. And I think design could lead to bringing people in together from different cultures through different mediums, could start to bring in collaboration and unity that we kind of need in today's world. Going off from there, I think design gives us the sort of the capacity to think different ways and borrow things from different fields such as engineering, history, science, math, and so on. And I think using those mediums could start to solve different problems, could result in a better world. Personally, in terms of design, something that excites me a lot is storytelling and narratives. I think storytelling is a powerful aspect in design where each design could start to tell a sort of own story about its people, its culture, and yeah, and design could never be boring to me because I get to learn about different views, perspectives, and borrow things from different platforms as a designer, as an architect, to shape the world, to shape the future. Yeah, thank you.
Wow, these are such thoughtful answers. I'm really excited for our next generation of designers that we have, and also just people who are agents of change. So once again, just thank you so much for your answers. At this time, we're actually going to transition to our Q&A shortly. So as I mentioned before, there's 12 of us on the screen who are going to be coming in, but we want to be able to hear just from the first chunk of people that we're talking. So also as a reminder, please make sure that you submit your questions for our panelists on YouTube or on Slack. We want to make sure that, the things that they're bringing up that you're able to kind of understand where they're coming from. Yeah, so with that, looks like we're ready to do our Q&A time. Just want to, first of all, welcome all of our panelists back from a long, long way from the diner. I do have some really exciting questions that are coming in from the audience. So to kick us off, the first question that I have for us is, what are some of the panelists' favorite spaces in Detroit or Southeast Michigan, and why is it your favorite space? So that's open to anyone. Anyone can answer it.
I can answer this. It's kind of cheating because I'm doing a project right now in the community, but it's kind of on Oakland and Euclid in that space. But really, one of the reasons why that's really one of my kind of my favorite spaces in Detroit is one, it's a really community centered kind of space. As even with the art, like the pavilion, I don't know if you guys know, but the Ghana think tank. And they have like the Riyadh kind of pavilions that's really, really dynamic. And I thought was like really cool. And I actually had the opportunity this summer to work with the people that's kind of reimagining what that commercial / half commercial, half residential unit is going to be. So that's really exciting for me. But just being a part of that process and really meeting a lot of the community members, meeting a lot of the community trust fund committee. It just really opened my eyes and it really just made me once again excited about what architecture can do and how like these spaces that you wouldn't normally see or even normally go to, how once you actually go, it's like you're walking into another world, and it's just really cool to me. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. Maybe one more person can respond to that question. Like, what are some of your favorite spaces in Detroit or Southeast Michigan? Why is it one of your favorite spaces?
I can answer that as well. So this is actually one of my favorite questions, kind of concerning architecture, and it's because, excuse me, actually one of my favorite places is what got me interested in architecture in the first place, and that is the GM building, or others may know it as the Renaissance Center in downtown Detroit. And so this is a story I always tell, but When I was around like 7 or 6 years old, that was the first time I went on the Riverwalk, the Detroit Riverwalk. My parents took me there. And that was the first time that I had actually seen this building up close. And so on the Riverwalk, there's a kind of a globe map at the back of this Renaissance Center. And if you look up from there, like the building is so large that it literally sort of curves as if it's towering over you, and it's so big and so immense that you can sort of just see like the light of the sun bouncing off the glass, and you can imagine like the people like and the sort of interactions that are going on inside of this building. And that's what architecture really means to me. Really sort of the accommodation of people, like the creation of collaborative spaces, and just the creation of relationships through kind of the use like of structure, of the use of architectural space. And so just kind of like seeing this for the first time was amazing, but really going inside and seeing like the fact that like there are so many venues and things, and there are open atrium spaces where people can sort of like collaborate, like sit together and just, you know, like have a good time, or even go up and down this building like without constraint. Those are really like the kinds of things that just get me super excited, and it makes me want to design these environments for people of the future, like for really just, you know, living your lives like in architecture and finding new relationships and new interactions like through spaces that are created by architecture, even if it's not separated by a wall. So that's my answers to that question.
Yeah, thanks for both of your answers. And it's interesting because a lot that you guys are bringing up is talking about like the people who are in the space and people who are interacting with the space. But not only that, but the people that you're partnering with as you're going through design. So I think it's really cool to, even as you think about some of your favorite spaces, that you even have, even for Darius, the opportunity to work with people who are in a space they really like. I want to take this time to ask a second question that came in from our Q&A. And the second question is, as the new next wave of designers, which is you all, how do you want to change or expand or shift the definition of our fields? So I might actually have Emily start us off and answer this question. So Emily, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts about this. How do you want to change or expand or shift the different definitions of our fields?
I would want kind of like design, because I know we all separate into architecture, interior design, graphic design, but more focusing on design as a whole, and kind of introducing design more to like low-income students, because I feel like for me as a Hispanic low-income student, it was a great opportunity to have and to be exposed to the field, and not only just the concepts that begin with design, but also people working in the field, because now it's even hard to meet people that look like you or that have come from a similar background as you. To be an architecture or to be an interior designer, it's usually you're exposed to people that are in engineering or in another STEM career. But I feel like being introduced to design at a young age would be really helpful. And I think that's something that as a field as design in general could focus on. I know that's something like I sort of pushed for as well in my school, introducing them to other design like organizations, nonprofits, so students could start learning about design, but maybe starting earlier in elementary school instead of in high school, so students can kind of grasp what design is and be exposed to the career.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Emily. And just for the audience to know, she didn't know I was going to share this, but she actually has participated and is playing a part in having more people and more people younger know about design. I know she helped in previous years with something called Project Pipeline. It's another free camp that's open to students from underrepresented communities. So I'm saying this to say that Emily is talking really about what she's about her talk. So I really thank you for your answer so much. I really appreciate that. Jennifer, I'd love to hear from you. Like, when you think about the next wave of designers, and as you are a part of that group in some way, shape, or form, like, how do you want to see change? How do you want to see things expand or shift in our fields?
That's a really good question, because I feel like lately, especially with society changing and people starting to think differently, I would personally want to see them keep that change, keep that new mindset, being open to more opportunities. I agree with Emily. I think if I would have been exposed to design a little bit earlier in my life, I would have chosen that career path instead of going off to something else. So I would like to see more of that, as well as being able to just overall like have more interaction with people. So if that's like little side like camps or just like PowerPoints that could like help draw people and help them explore.
Awesome. And thank you so much. I love these different opinions. I think we got time for one more question. So this will be posed to anyone that's here once again. And kind of like going off of that last question, what do you think that design needs more of?
I would
Okay.
love.
Oh,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. You know, you can go ahead.
I mean, I know we have similar answers. I mean, you guys are here, the Design Futures event to, help towards gentrification, to help stop all that, to incorporate more ideas, more cultures, all of that into the design of the environment and the world around us. So obviously, I think we can all agree on the fact that design definitely needs more people of color, more different perspectives, because if you look into the statistics, like 90%, 90 something percent of architects are like white men. And obviously that's a big problem. We need more perspectives, like Jennifer said. We need something new, so it could shake up the landscape, because you never know, because last time I checked, the color of someone's skin, someone's demographic, isn't really hindering them from being able to come up with the next great idea to collaborate on. So most definitely we need just more diversity, more inclusivity. It leads to more ideas and better projects. So yeah.
I guess I can go ahead. Just to kind of piggyback off of what Tamari was kind of saying, one, like gentrification, like totally is one of the big things. So like designing more for the community and make sure that the community can actually benefit from whatever is being put there. So like just this vast amount of development that's happening is really displacing a lot of people. So how, as architects, can we challenge that and really change that, so where all these cool things that we're creating, the people who live there, who have had stake in that community and in that space for probably generations going back, can actually stay to appreciate all of those benefits. Then it comes to like greenery within buildings, like, because what we think of now when we think of architecture, but we think of just like a building in like a big urban space. But like once you start thinking about climate change, thinking about greenery, and thinking about the effect that green spaces actually have on like your psyche and your activity in a space, that it just solves a lot of problems that have already been posed. And then even with that idea, just the possibilities of how to implement it starts to become endless. So perspective, absolutely, and we can accomplish that by just getting more perspective, I think.
That's awesome. Thanks. Yeah, give a clap to that. Even for all the answers we've heard so far, they've been awesome. I think we do have time for one more question. And this question is, what connections do you guys think that you want to see between the design field and your community? Because even as a lot of people are sharing, I think it's really great that you're able to identify how you've been able to see design have effect in your community and like the different communities that you're serving. So I'd just love to hear like what connections would you like to see between the design field and your community? And you can think about the community of where you physically live, like the neighborhood you live in. You can think about your identity in terms of your ethnic or racial identity, or any other identities that you feel best define you or a group that you're a part of. So yeah, what connections would you like to see between design field and your community? And actually, I'd love to hear from Aviv. What do you have to say? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it is important for the design field, or as designers and architects, for us to collaborate with the community more. One of the projects I got to work on was the West Riverfront Park, and during the process, I got to understand how important it is for the community to be involved in design, to be involved in their surroundings in a sense and what they want. Because one of my main thing about architecture and design is to care about the people. And in order for the design to care for a subject, we sort of need to understand what they need. So I think there should be a collaboration in between the community and architects as designers. So going back and forth to design and give what the people need.
Awesome. I love that. Maybe if we can get like one or two more answers. How would you like to see design and your community come together?
I can answer this a little bit as well. I would like to see the design field and my community kind of collaborate more in a sense that there's more programs available. I know there's schools that offer architecture in their high school, but I know in my community it's not really offered, and I would love to see like maybe like some sort like volunteer time where they'll teach kids about architecture, like what architecture actually means, because I feel like it's a concept that can be explained even to the smallest children, and I feel like they would really benefit. Because as a child, I feel like you're like a construction worker and all this, but I feel like being introduced to architecture as well could be a really beneficial thing, and have kids since a small age want to grow up to be an architect. I feel like that would be beautiful. So maybe more like volunteer or like nonprofits want to have an event or a small pop-up and like a park nearby, like Clark Park or something that's part of the community. I feel like that would be really beneficial for the community as a whole.
I love that. Thanks so much for sharing. I think we have time for one more person. I think, let's hear from Tamari. I think it's been a minute since we heard from you. Do you have any thoughts about like what connections you'd love to see between the design field and your own community?
Yes, for sure. One big thing to me, like, well, just to say, I agree with exactly what Emily said, just introducing it more to a young age. But another part of that is, especially with lower income communities, a lot of times the design, when building, infrastructure, all that good stuff, design is not really at the forefront of the consideration when building things. A lot of lower income housing is very streamlined. It's just how can I fit as much housing, how much people on this street as possible, and it's not really considering the inhabitants of the community, and that could have a really big effect, a big negative effect on them. It takes away that individuality, it takes away that uniqueness. It really strips them from their sense of creativity. It's not really inspiring, it's not really freeing when everything is so uniform around you. It can really create a constrained mindset around you. And I really think that design should definitely be more pushed to the forefront of that when coming to designing the communities around you, because of the fact that it can open up our minds, open up our brains, and definitely let us out, let us feel as if we're not just another person or another just number in a unit, in a grand scheme of just a bunch of other people just like us. It really promotes a sense of individuality, as opposed to that, not that.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that. I think actually I'll go for one more answer before we go on to the next part. So Darius, you have something to say? Sounds like you might have some good thoughts about this question.
Yes, I was hoping you could call me. But okay, so I just to piggyback, one, absolutely design need to be pushed more in like elementary and like early on, because just art in general just allows for a more creative mind and better thinking for problem solving. Like the way the school system kind of set up, it just feeds you a lot of information. But if you have like those kind of creative outlets, you can come up with creative solutions. Then it becomes a problem when you start developing in communities without ever talking to members in that community. So like, just for example, I just heard about this story last week about a project that was happening in the community, and a lot of the people didn't they didn't have the proper facilities to host like a kind of a general meeting. So they actually like kind of set up something with the local bar that actually got a lot of the community members in, where they posted up like this board. They had like their boards on and like ballots with different ideas. And you would like, when you come in, you would take a ticket, and whichever idea you like for the community best, you would drop it in. And it just offered a lot of natural conversation to the community to start talking about architecture and new possibilities for the community without it being so, I don't really know what the word I'm looking for, but without it being so formal. And so under a microscope. So that kind of opportunity where you can really learn what the community is, I think is something that will be great, especially if you were to connect it more with the youth, give them more of an opportunity.
Awesome. These are such good answers. I love the conversation here. So I just want to thank you all for our panelists, and also you guys join us on YouTube. You can even just give some little claps for the people who all presented. We're going to take this time to take a short intermission before coming back for our second half of the show. So I'll see you guys soon for our other 6 students. All right, I hope you enjoyed some good old Detroit techno there. And even as we come back, I'm still thinking about those conversations that we had. Like, wow, I would just love to hear you guys give an hour presentation of your thoughts. I'm very serious about that. With that, we're getting into the second quarter here. Or I want to take this time to welcome our three panelists to the counter with me. So you guys can take some time just to introduce yourself, tell the people who you are.
Hi, I'm Morgan Kistner. I was in ArcPrep in 2018, and I'm a sophomore. I'll be a sophomore this fall at the University of Michigan, and I am a film and television major, and soon I will hope to declare a double major in drama as well.
Hello, everyone. My name is Naive Perryman. I just graduated with a bachelor's from U of D Mercy, pursuing my master's in the fall for architecture.
Hi, my name is Sarah Shaw Nichols. I am a current junior at Cass Technical High School, and I'm currently in ArcPrep.
Awesome. I love to see just the different spectrum of people here from the different times at ArcPrep. So I got a question for our panel here, and the question is, what makes you feel a part of a community? And like, what aspects of a place help you feel like you belong? So the floor is open. Anyone can answer that.
Okay. Oh, you can.
That's fine though.
Okay. So first, I asked myself, what does a community mean? What do I think of? What are the words that come to mind when I think of a community? And I think of belonging. I think of fellowship, shared experiences, shared language, shared history, shared struggles. And then I think that being a part of a community should feel like home. And then I ask myself, well, what does home feel like? And to me, home should ultimately be a place of peace and comfort. Like at the end of the day, like when you come home after a long day, you're seeking peace, you're seeking comfort. When you think of your hometown or any place in this world that feels like home, the commonality is that it's comfortable to you. And I think that also that concept of familiarity is what makes you feel like you're a part of whatever community. Familiarity through those shared experiences, familiarity through the histories, through the struggles, it makes you feel like you're a part of that community. I think one of the good things about humanity is that everyone belongs to multiple communities. Like there's no one person on this earth that belongs to one singular community. Like that's one beautiful thing about humanity is that we're like multifaceted beings. So belonging to different types of communities. And we're at a point in society where we're starting to embrace the fact that we're multifaceted, embrace the fact that we belong to different communities at the same time. I think when we think of the world as a community as a whole, entire community, there are communities within the world as this one community. It's like a palimpsest of communities. There's just so many spaces that we belong to. And I think that embracing that nature within humanity is important. So in short, embrace brings familiarity, which brings community. So embracing the fact that we belong to multiple communities, embracing the fact that we're not singular individuals, embracing that brings a familiarity to whatever space, any place, embracing, and you feel the embrace when you're within a community, you feel the embrace through familiarity. So whatever type of embrace can be brought into a space makes you feel like you're a part of that community when your identified community isn't present.
Wow, that was really good, Naive. Thanks for that. Sarah, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts. What do you think makes you feel part of a community? And what helps you feel like you belong someplace?
Thank you, Sarah. First of all, Naive, very well spoken. I'm just, like listening here and enchanted. But for me, I feel most a part of a community when I know I can leave an impact, and whether that be like for better or for worse, because the way I look at it is when you're part of a community, loss is no longer, singular to yourself, and neither are your wins. In a community, you grow together, you adapt together, and you succeed together. And like Naive was saying, you can like be in multiple communities at once. Some I walked into and some I was born into. You know, I was born a Black woman. I'm an aspiring architect. I'm left-handed. I'm a student athlete. I'm in like, these are my communities. And like, you know, the way I look at it is, you know, you're truly in the fold of a community when you start celebrating strangers. And I say strangers, even though in the case of like fellow Black women, like our shared trials, our shared successes, like we may never meet face to face, but we have these shared experiences where we feel like we like know each other and we understand each other. And I feel like that unites us, and that's what community is like to me. And a few aspects of places that make me feel like I belong. First of all, is the space open for interpretation? And for that, I mean, is my movement, is my line of sight, like, am I limited to how I interact with the space? Or am I like free to interpret it as I see, you know? Like my least favorite room in the entire world is the doctor's office, because it's so like uncomfortable. You sit down and it's like, do you share your phone? Do you awkwardly reach for those out-of-date magazines? Do you stare and wait for your doctor to come in? Like, it's awkward. And like, even though I know like on paper I'm supposed to be there for an appointment, I don't feel like I necessarily belong. And like another thing I look at when I'm like questioning, do I belong in this space, is going back to community. Was this space built with me in mind? Okay, was it built with my neighbor in mind? Was it built with my community in mind? You know, I want to go to a space where I feel like my entire community can belong in that space. Like I want to know that my neighbor would feel welcome here just as I feel welcome here. And so that's like something that's how I know I belong in this space.
Wow, very thoughtful. And I love like not only about the people within your community feeling welcome, but even like the neighbor, the stranger, like you guys were both talking about. I'd love to hear what you have to say, Morgan. What makes you feel a part of the community?
It's hard act to follow with great answers like those, but I loved what Sarah said about the assigned community and chosen community. It's so deep to me. But so community for me is a word that I've kind of always struggled with, because I was a person who moved around a lot, and so having to readjust and relearn things. So that was always a hard thing for me to define. But now I look at it as I feel the most a part of a community when I'm around like-minded people. And like-minded people for me are like, you know, creatives in ways. So for example, in my friend group in high school, a lot of them wanted to be like doctors in the medical field. And of course, now we're in college. And so now they all are, you know, doing medical stuff, whatever it is, I don't know. And so, or just like STEM and engineering things. And I was in a lot of, you know, clubs, of course, and everything was just kind of STEM. But I was kind of the only one in that group who did not want to do STEM. I wanted to do film and television and write for that, just something in a totally opposite direction. I wanted to be in the arts. So the first time I really saw them, love my friends. The first time I really felt a part of a community was when I got to U of M and I joined this organization called the Residential College Players, which is basically an organization that puts on like plays and whatnot. And I did a play for them this past semester. And it was just so much fun, because it was like people are thinking like me, they do things like me, they're just creative like me. So it's kind of the first time I was with a big group of people who literally wanted to do everything that I wanted to do too. And so that's as a screenwriter, when I write movies and TV shows, when I have to think about communities in the sense for my characters. Because my job as a screenwriter is to make sure the audience understands why the character is the way they are. And that means, in the sense, does the character feel like they belong to any community at all? Are they an outcast in this community? What is, you know, their home life like? How does their home life affect them in this community? So this is a question I have to think about all the time. So that's what I would say is my answer to the question.
Wow, I'm telling you, I'm taking notes on everything that they're saying. Thank you, ladies, so much for your amazing answers. Oh my goodness. So we're going to take some time to transition to our next panel for now, but you know, we can't wait to see you guys back at our Q&A in a little bit. And as I mentioned before, if you have any questions or any comments that you have from the things that people shared, the YouTube feed is available for you to ask those questions. Or if you're a part of Design Futures, you can hop on over to the Slack channel. You can post them there too. Our panelists would have a chance to answer your questions after the next panel. And you know, given the answers that we've heard from these three ladies and even beforehand, I'm sure it'll be some really good discussion. So with that, we are excited to welcome our final group of panelists to the counter. So welcome to our space, welcome to our diner. You can take some time to introduce yourselves to the people out there.
Hello, my name is Ferdinand Bartolone, and I just graduated with my master's in architecture at the University of Detroit Mercy.
Hi, my name is Shaznin Dristi, and I recently graduated with my master's of architecture from University of Detroit Mercy, and I was part of ArcPrep in 2015, like the other two guys as well.
Hi, my name is Corzo Ko, and I also just recently graduated from University of Detroit Mercy with my master's, and as well as being at ArcPrep in 2015.
Awesome. I see we've got a UDM 2015 ArcPrep contingency in the house. So, for all of our designers at the table, I would love to hear, who should design serve and who should be in charge of designing public spaces? What do you guys have to say?
I can start off the conversation. So for me, like the obvious answer, who should design serve is actually everybody. But that's not always the case. Typically it's the architect or the designer. They meet up with, their clients, and it's just them talking to each other. But sometimes that affects, the surrounding of a project. For example, if a client wants like a development, a skyrise or something, that has an effect on the public, on the surrounding of it, because maybe that can affect how people walk, or like how it affects their sunlight and stuff like that. So that should always be the case. If a person or an architect wants, to design something, they should always include other people's voices. I feel like I have an example would be like when the Rockefeller Center was first made, the client wanted, the office spaces, and then the architect decided to place, a public space in front of the building, but ended up being like a dead space, like not very active. But then in the future, the client started, or the client or the owner started adding stuff so people can be more active with the surrounding of the space. There's other places here too where an example would be like, One Campus Marshes in front of it, or like the OCM building. They have like campus marshes for people. They decided to have this private space to be more to be more active with the public. So they decided to do that, which is a good example, and stuff like that. And I feel like it's the architect's responsibility, to create better places, because the design actually impacts the society in a way, and stuff like that.
Oh, that was really good. Thanks for sharing. Shajina, I'd love to hear your thoughts about this question.
Yeah, I totally agree with Ferdinand. For me, I think that design should definitely serve everyone, but when it comes to the public spaces, we often see that certain public spaces has been created that ignores the way us human beings actually move through the space or use that space in our daily life, in our everyday life. And instead of asking, because when in a community, when someone talks about having a new public space or new park, community members often talk to each other first and what they want with each other before the architects, before the city or urban planners. So, but when it comes to the design phase, we often see the lack of community participation or lack of public participation, who are actually the servers of that space, because they are the one who are actually using it. It's not the designers or the city planners might go there once in a while, or after the construction or the public space has been made, that's their job is kind of done at that point. But it's the public who from that point of time starts using that space. So I think that public designers and city planners need to create opportunities where public spaces are not just meant for aesthetically pleasing design, but also for the public who are using it. And they need to create scopes for public to come in the front space space and then participate in the design phase from the construction phase, because I do believe that architects have a great knowledge of design where they can help articulate the needs and how the spaces can be used most functional way for the public, because they have a great knowledge, but the public they need to hear from the public and the users first before they decide on the final design. So I think from moving from the nowadays we often see that the aesthetic and the design is like very aesthetically pleasing, and it's not celebrated. The public is not celebrated in those public spaces, but I think how the public uses that space should be celebrated in the design as well.
Wow, she's coming with the fire, everyone. I hope you're listening to everything she's throwing down. So I love that answer. Corzell, what do you have to say? What do you think design should serve? Who do you think it should serve?
So breaking down the question, who should design serve? I look at design as similar to one of the previous panel questions on design could be anything. First off, and making sure that there's a design for all and not a design for one. And I think as emerging architects and artists or designers, that we need to recognize that we can't single anyone out and be exclusive to anyone. And with that, that has a sense of community when you design for all. You're not designing just for one. As individuals, as humans, we all have different and multiple identities. And as we shift our identities throughout a day, which I focused on in my thesis, as well as Ferdinand and Shashni and Christy, and we all focused on identity as part of our thesis, I think this question really allows for us to have a broad answer, but also to understand that the built environment has designed spaces that should be constructed to support that idea of our multiple individual expressions and our identities that within the built environment. And knowing that the architect has a portion into that overall design, that design still has to come from the community, someone who is investing in the project, someone whose thoughts and ideas are put into the project, the construction workers for the project. So I think design has an overall factor into the project, but also that public spaces should be focused on designing for all.
Wow. I just, no words. Thank you so much, everyone, for your answers. We're going to take this time actually to transition to our Q&A shortly, but I just want to remind you, if you haven't already, you should be asking some questions for these panelists and the things that they said. I have my own questions that I know I want to ask, but I would love to hear some of the different things that you guys just want to learn more from these emerging voices. So once again, you can put those comments down in YouTube, you can hop over to the Slack and you can pop it there too. So I just want to welcome our panelists back to the table, or at least I'm at the table. I actually want to take this time now that we're all together to have just a question of, how should we think about this? The question I have is, how can design highlight the diversity within our communities?
I can go first. To answer that, I think for my thesis, I solely worked with the community in the Detroit neighborhoods. So for example, Detroit is a very diverse neighborhood. So when we are talking about creating any space in a neighborhood, in a city like Detroit, which is like full of diversity, we need to first acknowledge that the diversity of these people are very different. Some people who are living in Mexican town for decades is not gonna have the same need or same want as the people who are living in Bangla town, which has been taken by Southeast Asian immigrants in last 2 decades. So like in order to highlight the diversity, we first need to ask, include ourselves in those communities, go to their meetings. All of these neighborhoods, diverse neighborhoods, they have their own community meetings. They have their own community centers in their neighborhood. That's just a part of their life, everyday life. Every weekend they hold a meeting. Every weekend, every summer they hold festivals or carnivals in their neighborhood. It doesn't have to be in a bigger scale, but it's usually in a smaller scale. But we as designers or we as architects, we need to be part of these communities and understand from what their needs are from their perspective. We cannot design from what we have the knowledge of from the book or from what we learned in school or what we learned through magazines or what others have designed in a space like New York or California. Because the needs of these people, these neighborhoods, these diverse people are going to be different. And we really need to acknowledge that in order to highlight the diversity. So we cannot, we are as immigrants or as diverse people part of the bigger communities, but we also need to understand that there are smaller communities that have different needs or different wants in there to design for them.
Wow, that's really good. Thanks. Maybe like two more people can answer this question, but I actually would love to hear an answer from Morgan about this question, because although she's not an architectural designer, oftentimes, of course, with her script, she's designing worlds and designing the different people. So in your opinion, how do you think, how does or how can design highlight diversity within our communities?
Yeah, I think with media, it's the most important way to show diversity in general. And obviously throughout history, you know, movies have left minorities and ethnic people out of it for such a long time. And it's like now kind of for the first time, we're kind of entering into a world where finally it's very common, you know, just with was it Crazy Rich Asian? It was like one of the first like all Asian cast movies. Like that was so cool. So I think we're finally seeing so much more diversity in terms of like TV and movies and whatnot. So to me, like it's very important. I like decided a year or two ago that everything that I would do would star a Black woman. But I don't have a desire necessarily to write stories about race in that way. I just want to show that because I think a lot of people, when you have like an all Black movie, all Asian, whatever, that a lot of people think like, oh, it's not for me because I'm not that race. And so I just want to show like it really doesn't matter about the race, it's really the story behind it. So to have all my stuff star Black women, just to prove the point that it's about the story, not about the race of these characters and whatnot. And just diversity again, it's just so important to be able to see yourself on TV and movies, because you know maybe that character can inspire you to do something or be able to see people of color do these amazing things and whatnot. So yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks so much. Maybe one more person. Anyone who go over this question. You know, how does or how can design highlight this diversity that we see in our communities?
I'll answer. I think that this brings me back to the concept of embrace. So embracing ourselves as different people. I think like one of the common things within design and thinking of design as not just an architectural thing, you know, that everything that we have, everything that exists has been designed to some degree. So thinking about that ourselves as an organism of different working parts. So embracing the fact that we're a working body. Your heart and your lungs don't do the same thing. They work together. So embracing the differences within communities can help us design for diversity, understanding and acknowledging the fact that we have differences as a people and embracing those differences rather than saying, oh, this is a heart and this is lungs. These should not be working. No, they should work together. The differences should work together to impact the community that's around us. And once we start working as a body together with facilities, you know, architecture, art, any type of design, once we acknowledge that this is a working body, a working part, that each individual has their differences and understanding how to anchor those differences to be stronger, I think that will make our communities better, will make design better as a whole.
Wow, this is really good. Thanks so much, everyone. I got another question for us. And this question, you know, once again, it's open to anyone. But I would love to hear from you. What are some things that make for a good design mentor? Or another way you can think about this is, what was one impactful thing a mentor did or said for you? So open table, anyone can share.
I'll take this one to start off with. I'm, like I said, currently in our preps. I get to work with wonderful mentors every day. And I think something that I really value, well, first of all, I think architecture and design is all about bringing your experiences to the table. Because even if you feel like you can't offer anything, you have your like whole life experiences and your past interactions with buildings. And so I think when a mentor encourages you to explore that, like to explore like how, like put your, like I am like constantly like asked like how would I interact in the space, how would it affect me and stuff. And so I think that's a great example for mentor. And also like they do this like they impart they're not afraid to share like their mistakes. Like they'll share what they went wrong and they'll like help you go from there. And so I think that's what makes a good design mentor, when they like help you through and they don't just like, you know, talk themselves up, but they like tell you about the wins and the losses and they help you through. And so they try to better your experience. And I think, I think that is part of a great mentor.
Oh, that's good. Thanks for that. Maybe we could actually hear from some people who are currently in or going through architecture school. So for Nam, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like, what do you think makes a good design mentor? Or you can even think of your own experience of like one really impactful thing a mentor did or said to you.
Well, when I first started off, the architecture school, my freshman year, in our school, like the freshman mentor was assigned a mentor and stuff like that. I didn't have like a good experience with my mentor. We barely, checked in and stuff. I didn't hear anything from them and stuff like that. So that's one of like bad experience that I've been through. But I've had a couple of mentees over throughout school up, and because of that experience, I would always check on them every like not every day, but like when we had time, we would like always sit together and like talk, and like I was part of like a teacher assistants too, so they were so that class too were considered my mentees. So I would always talk to them like to figure out like, hey, is everything okay? Do you want to talk after class? Is there any problems? So I was always contacting them, like always, always with them, just in case they wanted something, or when it came with 30 or when they were looking for an internship and stuff, I would always like give them feedback and on their portfolios, on their resume, and trying to like make them, make help them find a job, like help them like the way I wanted it to be helped, but I didn't. So that was my experience and how I tried to be a good design mentor.
That's good. I think it's really encouraging that even an experience that you had that wasn't probably the strongest, that even as you are a mentor, I would say you're a mentor. The ways that you've been able to see that and even to show up for the different people who are coming up to you. So yeah, thanks for sharing. I'd love to hear what you have to say, Corzel, about like mentorship and like what do you think makes a good mentor, or like one instance where someone supported you well in your design journey?
I think mentorship really starts, it could really start from anyone in any field, really. And just being, and having an exploration of different fields, even if it's not in design field or art field, just knowing that there's many other options out there and things that you can learn from, whether that's communication, networking, most importantly, and any other types of fields. But for me, like Ferdinand was explaining how we have a mentor program at U of D. That program is very good because of the small community that we have there. It's only about 230, I believe, students at the school. So everyone knows each other on a first name basis, even with our professors. And even our professors were able to go to them, reach out to them, have conversations with them, and just having our projects be taken to the next level. And so I think that's very important in the design field and having that collaboration piece. And that allows for your project not only to be taken to the next level, but you are able to learn and have an experience that will take you to the next level in the years to come.
Awesome. Yeah, thank y'all for your answers. I've got another question for you guys. So imagine with me that in every single neighborhood in Detroit, there is an architect that's living there and working there. And just a question I have for y'all is, do you think architects need to be localized? And do you think that it's important to have like designated architects in every neighborhood or every community? So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts about that.
I would say for me, no, I don't think so, because it kind of goes back to what I was talking about, the identity and how the built environment kind of right now kind of excludes different identities that individuals have. And I think if we were to localize architects, you would lose those different identities that other individuals may have and may have more knowledge about. Yes, someone can become knowledge in a different identity or a different culture, religion, but I think localizing an architect, I don't think that would be a great idea in promoting a design space for a community.
Yeah, Nave, I see you're about to say something. You got something to share?
Yeah, I was about to say, I don't necessarily believe that we should localize an architect, but I do believe that you need a local advocate. So whether that is the architect of that area, the city planner, whoever it is, like I think that communities need a strong advocate and a strong voice so that they can be heard, so that their desires and their wishes can be heard. Just like Corzell said, there's different types of knowledges that come with being from different communities that you can bring into a community. That's a strength that could be brought to the table. So just being one way and having one architect for a local community may not be the strongest idea, but having a strong advocate for the community so that they could approach the architect and that both of their ideas can come together and make something beautiful. I think that is more beneficial to the community.
Wow, that's thoughtful, thoughtful. Yeah, anyone else? I'd love to hear it. Do you think architecture needs to be localized?
I think I completely agree with what others said. And I also want to add that having like mentorship programs like this can also help in like different communities. Because when I decided to do architecture, I knew that I didn't know anyone at all from my community or from my ethnicity who did architecture before. So I had no knowledge. I really jumped into this career field with just what ArcPrep taught me, which is I'm very grateful for. But it's just something over the last 5 years that I have been doing architecture. I have realized that even now, not many people in the communities of Detroit knows about architecture. Most people, like previous panel said, that they're doing engineering, they're doing some other sorts of career field, but design, architecture, that's not really celebrated in this smaller neighborhoods or immigrant communities in Detroit. So I think having mentorship programs from a high school level or middle school level would really help the people to go in this field, in this direction. And so in that way, we won't even need like one single advocate or one single architect to be localized in these neighborhoods, but the younger generation, middle schoolers, high school, they can all have a conversation about what architecture is, what design is, and can benefit the community through this conversation. So I think we need to localize the students from a very early age so that they can be a designer, or they at least have the knowledge about design and how they can benefit their community through design.
Oh, I love it. Maybe we can get just really good. I'm sorry, I'm just very taken away by all these answers. And I'd love to hear maybe one more person respond to this question. Do you think architecture needs to be localized?
Okay, I don't think architecture should be localized, as the previous people were saying. There's like someone in New York might have something offered to someone in Michigan, like to a neighborhood in Michigan. Something might have worked there, they can bring here, vice versa. You know, I feel like we can take our shared experiences. Architecture, like say me, a Black woman, can take her experiences to like a heavily concentrated like Hispanic population, and we can work together. We can meld our experiences so that that community can move forward. And while I like I said, or like everyone's saying, we want to see more diversity in the field, and that just because we have a Black designer coming in, don't want to limit to where we work, and we want to work with our own communities, but we want to like work across the board. And just like thinking about it like this, I do want to see architects like focus on community. I do want to see architects be active in the community. And like we've been saying, like getting down to those younger kids, getting down to this younger generation. I grew up and I had like no experience meeting actual people in the architecture field prior to this year. So I do want like architects to like be out in the public and work with their communities and like talk and engage in the communities, but does their work need to be localized? No.
Wow, even some of your answers surprised me from how it answered. So thank you so much for your insights. I think I'm gonna wrap us up with one more question. So the last question I have for us is, sorry, I have a little bit of something in my throat. So there's just a spectrum of people represented here. We have some people who are in ArcPrep right now or still in high school. We have some people who just finished their master's program. So we have just a pretty wide spectrum of people in their different design educations or their other art related disciplines. And the question that I have for us is, what are some resources that you think would have been helpful or would have been handy when you were studying architecture or studying design or studying your artistic discipline? So I just love to hear, what do you think what would have been some good resources looking in hindsight?
I feel like for me, it'd be like, well, it's a resource that I've had. It'd be like a foundation for studying architecture, pursuing architecture would be, for example, would be like ArcPrep or any other like a program that would teach you architecture. Because if every person in architecture school would have that type of foundation, they would either decide to pursue architecture or not. Because I've seen a lot of like people when I first started studying architecture, like they didn't have that like that foundation, and they started and like this when they started school, they were like much more stressful and stuff like that, and they were like more stressed when they didn't know what to expect. So then they're up like dropping and stuff like that, and which is sad to see other people not pursue architecture. But it's also good to see like for me, when I first did the ArcPrep program, I was much more like prepared because when I started school, because like I knew AutoCAD and all this stuff like design, so that also helped me pursue my career. And I also had like a little brother in high school. He was thinking about architecture, but when he took the program, he didn't like it, so he's like, architecture is not for me anymore. So he ended up choosing a career. So having that type of research like in the beginning would be really good.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And I do want to share that I did teach his younger brother, so I can attest that they had that conversation about design. So that's cool to see. Yeah, I'd just love to hear, maybe for this question, we can hear from everybody. You could just share some resources or things you think that would have been helpful. So whoever's up next, you can share.
I think I would just say in one word, mentorship programs, because I liked that even when I started architecture in college. But in last, like, as Ferdinand said, I tried my best to be part of more mentorship program as an architect, as a senior architect. And I think that really helped me because now that I talk about architecture openly in my social media or post my things, a lot of people actually ask me, younger generation actually ask me, oh, how is this? What do you guys actually do? How is school? Is it really worth it? So they like ask, which I didn't have as a teenager, as a high schooler, or even as a college student. So I think that's one thing that the communities or the schools can include in their program, where they have like the current graduates or recent graduates coming into them or giving like showcasing their work or how college life is, because architecture school is very different than all other school, and people who really drop out, they drop out mainly because they did not have that exposure of the environment that architecture students go through. So that's like a big culture shock for a lot of people. So I think having a mentor who's like very through about their experience, their journey throughout the architecture school and even after that can be very helpful.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for your answer. Corzell, I'd love to hear, what do you think would have been some resources that'd be helpful for you or for anyone studying architecture or design?
Yes, my answer is actually a combination between Ferdinand and Shazmin's on exposure and more programs like ArcPrep. I know for me, ArcPrep's kind of solidified my choice of becoming an architect before starting college. And I think with that, it did create a solid foundation on learning programs, having critiques, and just creating designs overall. But I think with those two, with exposure beginning in middle school or elementary, and definitely knowing for sure if you would like to become an architect or designer before starting college, and going through your courses, or before even graduating, that architecture or design is what you want to do, I think would really be beneficial.
Awesome. Navea, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on the question.
Well, I agree with all of the above. I think we all have this like shared story with being with ArcPrep, like how it really prepared us for the structure of a studio, of a college level architecture course. I think that maybe if there was some type of like summer bridge program, when I was in high school, they had us like at the school summer bridge. It was like a fake 1 week program where we were fake attending classes for a week just to get ourselves equipped. I think if we like hosted maybe like a summer bridge charrette like event where the older students would be paired with younger students and they work on like a project for a week, and then they get to understand the tools, they get introduced to new students, they get introduced to the studio environment and setup and critique or whatever the case may be for the teams. I think that would be nice, like over the summer, just maybe like a week or so, because then that will help any oncoming student know whether or not this is for them or not before they even get started with assigning themselves to classes and everything and having to transfer out. I think that will help them understand the setup, understand the concept of critique and sharing designs, sharing ideas. I think like maybe like just a small 1 week program, charrette, sharing idea thing. I think that will help a lot because everybody doesn't get an ArcPrep high school experience. So this would be kind of like a transition phase in between high school and college.
Cool. Maybe I'll open it up for like our last two people if you want to quickly share just some resources you think that would be helpful for anyone studying design or studying architecture.
Yeah, although I'm not, and I didn't pursue architecture. I always say that ArcPrep was like the best class I ever had in all of high school because it was like the only one that actually immersed you in a career field. And I think we should do that for all career fields because I think a lot of kids get into these majors or whatnot, and they're like, oh, this sucks, I don't like this, blah, blah, blah. And they end up switching and going through all this thing. A lot of people know what they to do. So I feel like we could avoid people not knowing what they want to do. We just have more immersive classes like ArcPrep, and that's my quick version of that.
Yeah, I love your perspective on that, Morgan. Sarah, you want to bring us home? Any resources or things you'd be helpful for people studying architecture?
I just think I think the mentor like absolutely push that, but like diversity and mentorship is key because I can't put into words how valuable it is to see someone who looks like you doing something. Because unfortunately, sometimes you do think, oh, maybe I would pursue that, but you hesitate because you're like, well, would I fit into that field? And so like we need to like have younger students seeing fellow like Latino representation, fellow Black representation, like women. We need to see that so these kids know that there's nothing that can stop them.
Oh, I'm just so thankful for all of your answers and all of your insights. And I really wish nothing but the best for all of you guys. Whether you go on to start your own practices or you start your own film companies or organizations, I'm rooting for you all. So I just thank you so much, everyone, for this. With that, that just about wraps up our time. And I really hope that you really enjoyed this time we have with our 12 incredible panelists. Their answers in the discussions were inspiring and impactful. And even for me, just for hearing the conversations that they had, I'm like, I would just love to hear them just talk for a longer amount of time about some of their thoughts. Because oftentimes it is the future, it is the younger people that know what is best or some good things that would be helpful for us as an architecture profession, but even in different design fields we find ourselves in. So I just once again want to thank Design Futures for allowing us this platform in order to have this discussion. And we look forward to seeing where these 12 amazing design thinkers end up in the future. So I just want to thank you all for coming today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your Friday.